The rand is upbeat so far this Thursday, even as domestic producer inflation edged up to 4.6% in March this year. In early trade, the local currency traded at 19.19 against the dollar, and it's now trading firmly at around 18.98. For more on this and other market moves, we are joined now by Gary Booysen. He is the portfolio manager at Rand Swift. Gary, it's great to talk to you. Thanks for coming onto the program. I've given sort of a bird's eye view, but how are the markets faring so far today after that positive start?
Yeah, so we've got definitely, well, I suppose the all-share index is essentially flat overall, but I think the big news of the day is the deal potentially between BHP and Anglo American, with BHP trying to do an all-stock offer at, I think it's £25.08 for the entire listing if they unbundle Kumba and Amplats, and that's driven the resource index a lot higher. So we've got the resource index up around 1.3, we call it 1.6%. The financial index is also up today. That's also up around, call it a third of 1%. And then we have the industrial index lagging a little bit. So that down almost 1%. And I think a lot of that move coming from, a little bit of negativity creeping into the Naspers process holding. We've had a very, very good week for those two, just as Tencent announced that it would be launching a game that has been delayed for a long time. Obviously, Tencent is the big holding in both Naspers and Prosus, and with the Chinese regulators looking a little bit more, I suppose, optimistic and a little bit more welcoming to the idea of gaming stocks in China, that obviously lifting that price. Today we're seeing a little bit of profit taking, so down around 1.6%, and because of their weighting in that underlying industrial index, that's pulling that index down. As you said, currency a lot firmer against the US dollar, also firmer against the euro. It could be that Anglo BHP transaction that's just helping to actually lift the pound. That's how big that transaction is. Gold price also marginally higher. We've seen the gold price coming off a little bit recently as I think tensions in the Middle East, just simmer, but didn't escalate. So gold currently trading around $2,325 an ounce.
All right, Gary, Stats SA has released the latest producer price index print. Talk us through that data and its significance in understanding overall inflation.
Oh, of course, but producer prices will feed into consumer prices. So where if you see a big lift in factory gate inflation, you're going to see a big lift ultimately in consumer price inflation as well. So it wasn't a big move in the overall number. I mean, month on month it was up 1.1%. But year on year, you've seen a move from 4.5% to 4.6%. So not a big change. In the underlying basket, the biggest contributor to the move higher, unfortunately, was food, beverage, and tobacco products. Food though is a very volatile component to the basket as well. So we don't want to hear that food prices are increasing more rapidly, but also just bear in mind that is a more volatile number, and we can see that change quite quickly. On the detractors was really transport equipment was where we saw prices falling. So well, not falling, but not growing as quickly. So transport equipment only up 3.5% compared to 5.7% in the last print.
And then what do you know about this story, Gary? Outer has lodged a complaint with the information regulator about Sanral's failure to provide all the documentation that Outer requested about a 4.7 billion tender awarded in KZN to a company whose directors are facing fraud charges. I mean, we've heard this story before, but what do you know specifically about this case?
Well, probably not more than you can read in the paper. It's not a listed company. This is something that I think is just of national public interest. And I think, obviously looking at it, Outer just, heavily relying on Section 11 of PIA, which is, essentially the act dealing with access to information, and saying that, Sanral essentially as a public body has a duty to supply this information. And, given the irregularities with the directors, which I believe go all the way back to 2012, you can see why they're looking at this transaction so closely. And I think NGOs like Outer have they have an important important role to play in reducing corruption in South Africa, which is obviously reducing the abuse of the tax revenue in the fiscus is incredibly good for all South Africans, and they do have a very important role to play. I don't know if I can add any any specific information around the story, but it's out to doing good work, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you said, it is a story of national importance. Canal Plus, Gary, as we wrap up our conversation, now owning 41.6% of MultiChoice, the French media group, continuing to buy shares, and it certainly looks like they're making their intentions clear about taking control of Africa's largest pay TV company.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think they, when they put through essentially the offer to all shareholders at 125 rand per share, their intention is very clear. They want this. They see this as as part of their strategy to enhance their streaming services, across Africa. Obviously the French language in Africa is very, very prevalent as well. So it does make sense for them. And I think they're looking over at Disney Plus and Amazon Prime and the success of Netflix and saying, they've seen a lot of success internationally and they want that as well. Currently, the MultiChoice Group is trading at 117 rand per share. The deal price is 125 rand per share. So you can understand the price that they're paying for the stock essentially is below the deal price at the moment. So why would they not be buying in the open market? So that will gradually lift their stake as MultiChoice shareholders decide to sell their stock to them at a level that is lower than the 125 offer price that they've made.
Yeah, absolutely. Gary, let me thank you for your time. Gary Booysen is a portfolio manager at Rand Swiss.